Hello crafty friends, this is card number 7 in Full Deck Challenge 2. Today's prompts are brought to you by the lovely Alison from the Full Deck Challenge group on Facebook. I put a call to action in the group asking for everyone to put down 4 prompts, and then I randomly selected one of the comments, and this was the one that I selected. So we're going to use a book page. The coral color that I have is the distress ink called Abandoned Coral by Tim Holtz. And then for my zigzag, I have a stencil, so I'm going to do some kind of maybe texture paste with my zigzag stencil. And then for the tree, I'm going to be making a tree out of scrap paper. I'd like to thank everyone who put some prompt suggestions down. They were all really great, so I had to just randomly pick one because I couldn't really choose. They were all so wonderful, and I will probably in the future do a similar kind of little task. I think it was quite fun, and it also gives me a challenge to work with other people's prompts. As per usual, I don't really have an idea of what the final card will look like. I'm just going to work and just see what comes of it. So you will see during the video that I do change my mind a couple of times with some things that I do, but I do show you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you can always learn from my mistakes. I started off by adding the book page diagonally onto the entire face of the card using Mod Podge. But then while I was drawing this, I realized that I didn't want the entire card face to be covered with a book page. So while it was still relatively wet, I tried to pull the book page off, and as you can see, as I pulled it off, some of the paper stayed behind, which I actually then thought looked really, really nice. It's similar to a technique I've used previously, where I've used a glue stick and book pages to leave some of the page behind, which leaves it like a really rustic look. And then I'm adding a layer of white tissue paper over the entire face of the card, which is normally how I prep the card. This is just the tissue paper that you'd get for gift wrapping. Adding this too with some Mod Podge. Once this is all dry, just tear off the excess tissue paper. You could also use the scissors if you prefer. You can join the Full Deck Challenge at any time. You can start with the first deck, which is already completed, or follow along with this deck, which is deck number 2. I'll put a link to the playlists in the description below. I then add a little bit of glue stick just here and there on the top of the card, and then I put some book pages down over the glue stick, just upside down and sideways. It doesn't have to all be straight. I like the randomness. If you're on Facebook, you can also find my group there. Just search Full Deck Challenge Group. Once the glue stick is dry, we're going to then peel off the book page, and you'll see there where the glue was, it will stay behind, which leaves just a little bit of the book page, and it's not overwhelming, but you still get that texture and that color. Next, I'm going to do my stenciling. I'm going to place my zigzag stencil down, and then with my palette knife, I'm just going to press through some texture paste. I'm not doing it all over the card. I'm doing just 3 zigzags on the one side. I would really love if you subscribed to my channel. I have lots of tutorials, junk journals, art journaling, and of course the Full Deck Challenge coming your way. All you need to do is hit the subscribe button, and then also don't forget to hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. I press my ink pad onto an acrylic block, and then I spray a couple of sprays of water, and then I press my card into the wet ink. And you can see it leaves a beautiful, uneven, splotchy and splotted look with the ink. I prefer this to just a flat color. Once the ink is dry, I'm going to add some white splatter using some watered down acrylic paint, and I'm doing this just to lighten the background a bit because the coral color is quite bright. This is just to sort of lift up the color a little bit, or tone it down is the word I'm looking for. So now to make my tree, I'm using some scrap paper, and I've made these trees before for another project, and they're really quick and simple and really quite fun to make. So I'm just going to cut a circle. I'm just using an old roll of masking tape just to give me a template, and I'm just roughly cutting the circle out. I'm using different coordinating colors, and I'm going to make 3 circles in total, and each circle is going to be slightly bigger than the other one. When cutting this, you don't have to be precise. It can be quite rough looking. You can use a punch if you really like perfect circles. I don't like perfect circles for these kinds of trees, so I'm just doing a really quick scissor cut. We are then going to glue each circle one onto the other. I'm just going to use a glue stick for this. And when you place them down, just sort of place it so that the bottom part of the circle is sort of closer to the bottom, and there's a bigger gap at the top part of the circle, if that makes sense. So the circles are the leaf part of the tree. I'm now going to make the trunk. I'm just using a piece of brown cardstock that I had. I'd used an embossing fold on it just to test something. I like the texture, so I'm just roughly drawing what will look like a trunk with a few branches, and then I'm just fussy cutting that out. And then I'm going to glue that also using the glue stick to the circles. And then isn't that a cute little tree? But when I place it onto my altered playing card, this color tree is not working at all with the background. So I'm going to work with something else. This tree can be for another project. I'm going to go with black and white. I'm thinking that'll be a bit more striking with the coral background, and it'll look much, much better. So take 2 on the circles for my tree. I'm going to cut them out the same way as I did the first lot. This time for my trunk, I'm going to use some vintage looking script paper. I think this looks really nice, and the lighter color will suit the black and white. I'm going to add a little bit of gesso to the background just to lighten some areas just a bit, and I think this will allow the black and white tree to pop out a little bit more. I'm then going to stick the tree to the card using hot glue. The reason for hot glue is because I'm sticking this onto texture pastes and an inky background, and I feel it'll hold a bit more securely. I'm going to use a black Posca pen. You could also use a fine liner or any kind of black felted pen or marker that you have. I'm just going around the trunk just to make it stand out a little bit. Feeling it's getting a little bit lost in the background because the tones are quite similar, so I'm just going around it just to emphasize it a little bit. And then for some contrast, I'm going to add these small turquoise buttons, just 3 of them with hot glue onto my tree. That can be the flowers or the fruit. I then found a little sentiment, every day is a new beginning. I'm just going to cut that in half so it's in 2 pieces and then paste that down. And while I'm looking at this card, I feel it needs some more balance. The turquoise is really great, but it's just on its own. So I'm going to add a little bit of turquoise just to the right hand side of the card. I'm using my color burst powders with a bit of water just to balance the color of the turquoise throughout the card. Once that color is dry, I'm just going to cover the tree and the text with just some scrap paper, and then I'm going to use the same turquoise just to splatter over that area. I always love a splatter. I think it gives a great addition of color in not a really harsh way, just very softly, and gives it a bit of a pop of color. Once it's dried, let me show you a close-up of what this card looks like. Look at the beautiful texture and the way the colors blend one into the other, the beautiful marks that the splatter makes, and the texture of the zigzag just pushing through. I think this card turned out great. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and were inspired to create your own card. Don't forget to subscribe. I will see you again soon. Bye.